Officer Bradley's signal was subtle but clear to Sarah. He wanted her to trust him and be ready to act when he gave the word. The tension in the train car was suffocating as the shorter man kept his rifle trained on the officer, while Sarah maintained her aim at the taller criminal. "Nobody needs to get hurt here," Officer Bradley said, his voice gaining strength. "You two are already looking at kidnapping charges. Don't make it worse by harming innocent people." The shorter man laughed bitterly. "Innocent? That woman back there saw everything that happened the night Henderson died. She can identify our boss, which makes her anything but innocent in our book." From the rear compartment, the woman's voice grew stronger despite her obvious pain. "I never saw anyone kill Mr. Henderson. He just clutched his chest and fell over when your boss started shouting at him about the blackmail money. It was a heart attack, just like you said." Sarah realized this woman might be the key to everything. If she could testify that Henderson's death was indeed from natural causes, it could clear their boss of murder charges while still exposing the blackmail scheme. But first, they all had to survive this standoff. Rex had been quietly moving closer to the shorter man, using the shadows and hanging blankets for cover. Sarah noticed his position and understood what the intelligent dog was planning. She caught Officer Bradley's eye and nodded slightly, indicating she was ready for whatever came next. "Here's what's going to happen," Officer Bradley announced firmly. "You're both going to put down your weapons and surrender. The storm is clearing, and by morning there will be search parties looking for me. You can't hide forever." As if responding to his words, a distant sound penetrated the train car, the mechanical rumble of a snowplow working to clear the railway line. The shorter man's eyes widened as he realized their isolation was ending sooner than expected. In that moment of distraction, everything happened at once. Rex launched himself at the shorter man's legs, throwing him off balance. Officer Bradley dove toward the taller criminal, using his recovered strength to tackle him. Sarah kept her weapon trained on the chaos, ready to fire if necessary, but hoping she wouldn't have to. The shorter man's rifle discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as he fell, and Rex maintained his grip on the man's leg, while Officer Bradley subdued the other criminal. Within minutes, both men were secured with their own ropes, and Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. The sound of the approaching snowplow grew louder, accompanied by voices calling out. Officer Bradley managed to retrieve the emergency whistle from his equipment and sent out a series of sharp blasts that would guide the rescue team to their location. Sarah carefully made her way to the rear compartment, where she found a young woman in her 20s, pale and weak but alive. The woman's eyes filled with tears when Sarah brought her baby to her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I'd never see my daughter again." When the rescue team finally reached the train car, they found Officer Bradley had everything under control. The two criminals were in custody, the evidence they'd tried to destroy was secured, and 3 lives had been saved by the courage of a 17-year-old girl and her loyal dog. Sarah's father was among the rescue team, having spent the night organizing search parties when she hadn't returned home. The relief in his eyes when he saw his daughter safe was worth every frightening moment she'd endured. The case that followed exposed a corruption network that reached throughout the county, just as Henderson's blackmail records had suggested. But most importantly, a baby girl would grow up knowing that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the worst storms, proving that courage and determination can overcome even the darkest circumstances. Sarah knew she had to act quickly, but she also understood that rushing could make the situation worse. She carefully examined the steep slope, identifying the safest route down to where she had spotted the blue fabric. The morning light was getting stronger, which would help her see better. But it also meant that if someone was injured, they had already been there for hours, possibly all night. She secured her backpack tightly and instructed Max to stay at the top of the ravine. "Stay, Max, good boy, stay here," she commanded firmly. Max whined in protest, clearly wanting to follow her, but his training held. He sat down but remained alert, watching Sarah's every move as she began her descent. The first few feet were the most challenging. Sarah had to lower herself over the edge, feeling for secure footholds with her feet while gripping exposed tree roots with her hands. Her heart pounded as she realized how exposed she was, but the thought of someone needing help drove her forward. Each step had to be calculated and deliberate. About halfway down, Sarah's foot slipped on a loose rock, sending a small avalanche of stones tumbling below her. She pressed herself against the rocky face, breathing heavily as she regained her composure. From above, she could hear Max barking anxiously, responding to her moment of danger. She called up to reassure him, then continued her careful descent. As she got closer to the bottom, Sarah could see more clearly what had caught Max's attention. There was definitely a person down there, lying motionless among the rocks and debris. The blue fabric she had spotted was part of a uniform, and her heart sank as she realized this was likely someone who had fallen from the trail above, possibly during the night when visibility was poor. When Sarah finally reached the bottom of the ravine, she approached the figure cautiously. It was a man, probably in his 30s, wearing what appeared to be a police officer's uniform. He was unconscious, lying at an awkward angle that suggested he had fallen a considerable distance. Sarah could see that he was breathing, which gave her a surge of hope. But she also noticed blood on his forehead and the unnatural position of his left leg. Sarah had taken a first aid course at school the previous year, and she tried to remember everything she had learned. First, she checked to make sure the officer was breathing properly and that his airway was clear. She then looked for obvious signs of injury without moving him, knowing that moving someone with potential spinal injuries could be dangerous. The officer's name tag read, Thompson, and Sarah spoke to him gently, hoping to get some response. "Officer Thompson, can you hear me? My name is Sarah, and I'm here to help you." There was no response, but she noticed his eyelids flutter slightly, suggesting he might be somewhat aware of her presence. Sarah's mind raced as she considered her options. The officer needed immediate medical attention, but getting help to this remote location would be extremely challenging. She realized she would have to climb back up to try to find a cell phone signal and call for help, but leaving him alone felt wrong, especially if his condition worsened. Looking around the ravine, Sarah spotted the officer's radio, which had apparently been thrown clear when he fell. She crawled over to retrieve it, hoping it might still work. The device looked damaged with a cracked case and what appeared to be a loose antenna, but she pressed the power button anyway. To her relief, it crackled to life, though the signal seemed weak and intermittent. Sarah had heard enough police shows on television to know the basic radio protocol. She keyed the microphone and spoke as clearly as she could. "Emergency, emergency. This is Sarah Martinez. I found an injured police officer at the bottom of a ravine off the Whispering Pines Trail. Officer Thompson is unconscious and appears to have serious injuries. We need immediate help." The radio crackled with static, and Sarah wasn't sure if her message had gotten through. She repeated it several times, varying her position in the ravine to try to get a better signal. Finally, a voice came through the static. "This is dispatch. We received part of your transmission. Can you repeat your location and the nature of the emergency?" Relief flooded through Sarah as she realized help was on the way. She provided as much detail as she could about their location, describing the fork in the trail and the approximate distance they had traveled. The dispatcher asked her several questions about Officer Thompson's condition, and Sarah did her best to provide accurate information without moving him unnecessarily. The dispatcher informed Sarah that search and rescue teams were being mobilized, but it would take at least an hour for them to reach the location, possibly longer given the difficult terrain. They advised her to keep the officer warm and comfortable, monitor his breathing, and call back immediately if his condition changed. Sarah looked around for anything she could use to help make Officer Thompson more comfortable. She found his jacket, which had been torn off during the fall, and carefully placed it over his upper body to help maintain his body temperature. The morning air was still quite cold, and she was concerned about hypothermia adding to his injuries. From above, Max continued to bark occasionally, and Sarah realized he was probably worried about her extended absence. She called up to reassure him, and his barking subsided to anxious whining. She wished she could bring him down to help provide warmth, but the descent was too dangerous for the dog, and she needed him to stay where he could potentially guide rescuers to their location. As she waited for help to arrive, Sarah talked to Officer Thompson even though he remained unconscious. She had read somewhere that unconscious people could sometimes hear voices, and she hoped her presence might provide some comfort. She told him about Max, about her love of hiking, and about how they had discovered him. She promised that help was coming and that everything would be okay. The wait seemed endless, but Sarah remained vigilant, checking his breathing regularly and watching for any signs that his condition might be deteriorating. She also kept an eye on the weather, hoping that the clear morning sky would hold and not bring the afternoon thunderstorms that were common in the mountains. The minutes dragged by as Sarah maintained her vigil beside Officer Thompson. She had been in the ravine for nearly an hour, and the morning sun was climbing higher, bringing both warmth and the promise of afternoon weather changes that could complicate any rescue operation. Sarah knew that mountain weather could shift quickly, and she hoped the rescue teams would arrive before any storms developed. Officer Thompson's breathing remained steady but shallow, which concerned Sarah. She continued to monitor him closely, occasionally speaking to him in hopes that her voice might reach him wherever his consciousness had retreated. His face was pale and the blood from his head wound had dried, but she could see other injuries that were likely more serious than they appeared. The radio crackled occasionally with updates from the dispatch center. Sarah learned that a helicopter rescue team was being deployed along with ground units, but the helicopter would need to find a suitable landing area, which might be challenging in the mountainous terrain. The ground teams were making their way up the Whispering Pines Trail with specialized equipment for moving an injured person over difficult terrain. From her position at the bottom of the ravine, Sarah could hear Max barking periodically from above. His barks had changed from anxious whining to what sounded more like alert calls, and Sarah wondered if he might be hearing or sensing the approaching rescue teams. Dogs had much better hearing than humans, and Max might be detecting sounds that were still too far away for Sarah to notice. As time passed, Sarah began to piece together what might have happened to Officer Thompson. Based on his position and the damage to the vegetation around him, it appeared he had fallen from somewhere higher up on the mountain, probably from a trail or overlook that was well above where Sarah and Max had been hiking. The fact that he was alone and had fallen during darkness suggested he might have been responding to an emergency call or conducting some kind of patrol. Sarah's water bottle was nearly empty, and she was beginning to feel the effects of her extended time in the ravine. The adrenaline that had carried her through the initial discovery and descent was wearing off, replaced by fatigue and growing concern about Officer Thompson's condition. She noticed that his breathing seemed to be becoming more labored, and she wondered if internal injuries were becoming more serious. The radio suddenly burst to life with a much clearer signal than before. "Sarah, this is Rescue Team Alpha. We are approximately 20 minutes from your location. How is the patient's condition?" Sarah grabbed the radio eagerly and responded. "His breathing seems to be getting more shallow and he hasn't regained consciousness at all. He's been unconscious for at least 2 hours now." She provided additional details about his visible injuries and his positioning, information that would help the rescue team prepare for what they would find. The rescue team leader's voice came back reassuring and professional. "You're doing great, Sarah. Keep monitoring his breathing and keep him warm. We have advanced medical equipment with us and will be able to stabilize him once we reach your position. Can you see any way for us to get stretcher equipment down to your location?" Sarah looked around the ravine with new eyes, trying to assess the terrain from a rescue perspective. The route she had taken down was clearly too dangerous for bringing equipment, but she noticed that the ravine extended in both directions, and there might be gentler slopes further along that could accommodate a stretcher team. "The way I came down is too steep for equipment," she reported back. "But if you follow the ravine about 50 yards to the north, it looks like the slope might be more manageable. There are some large trees that could provide anchor points for ropes." "Excellent observation," came the reply. "We'll assess that route when we arrive. You've been incredibly helpful, and Officer Thompson is lucky you found him when you did." The praise felt good, but Sarah was more focused on the immediate situation. She noticed that Officer Thompson's lips were beginning to look slightly blue, which she remembered from her first aid training could indicate breathing problems or circulation issues. She reported this change immediately, and the rescue team advised her to ensure that his airway remained clear and to be prepared to call out if his breathing stopped. Above them, Max's barking became more frequent and excited, and Sarah was certain now that he was detecting the approach of the rescue teams. His barks were no longer anxious but seemed almost welcoming, as if he understood that help was finally arriving. Sarah called up to him, "Good boy, Max. Bring them here." Soon Sarah could hear human voices in the distance, calling out instructions to each other and coordinating their approach. The sound of breaking branches and equipment being moved through the forest became audible, and Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. Professional help was finally within reach. The first rescuer appeared at the top of the ravine about 30 minutes after Sarah had heard their voices. He was wearing a bright orange rescue vest and carried a large backpack filled with medical equipment. "Sarah?" he called down. I'm Mike and I'm with Mountain Rescue. You did an outstanding job getting down there and calling for help. Is he going to be okay? Sarah called back, her voice cracking slightly with emotion and exhaustion. We're going to take excellent care of him, Mike replied. We have a doctor with us and we're setting up to bring him up safely. You saved his life by finding him when you did. As more rescue team members arrived and began setting up their equipment, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility beginning to lift from her shoulders. She had done everything she could, and now trained professionals would take over Officer Thompson's care. But she also felt reluctant to leave his side after spending so much time watching over him. The rescue operation was about to begin in earnest, and Sarah would soon learn whether her quick thinking and brave actions had been enough to save Officer Thompson's life. The rescue operation unfolded with impressive efficiency and coordination. Within minutes of the first rescuer's arrival, the top of the ravine became a hub of organized activity. Sarah watched from below as team members in bright orange vests worked together to set up rope systems and lower medical equipment down to Officer Thompson's location. Dr. Patricia Chen, an emergency medicine physician who volunteered with the mountain rescue team, was the first to be lowered into the ravine. She rappelled down with practiced ease, carrying a medical pack that seemed almost as large as she was. Her presence immediately brought a sense of professional competence to the situation that made Sarah feel enormously relieved. You must be Sarah, Dr. Chen said with a warm smile as she landed softly near Officer Thompson. I'm Dr. Chen, and I want you to know that you did everything exactly right. Your quick thinking and first aid knowledge may have saved this man's life. Dr. Chen immediately began a thorough assessment of Officer Thompson's condition, using equipment that Sarah had only seen in medical television shows. She checked his vital signs, examined his injuries more thoroughly than Sarah had been able to do, and began preparing him for the difficult journey back up the ravine. His name is Officer Thompson, Sarah offered, feeling like she should contribute something to the medical assessment. I found his radio and was able to call for help about 2 hours ago. He's been unconscious the whole time. That's very helpful information, Dr. Chen replied as she worked. The fact that you kept him warm and monitored his breathing was crucial. He has a head injury and what appears to be a broken leg, but his vital signs are stable thanks to your care. 2 more rescue team members descended into the ravine, bringing with them a specialized rescue stretcher, designed for evacuation from difficult terrain. The stretcher could be broken down into components for transport and then reassembled, and it included straps and padding to keep an injured person secure during movement over rough ground. Sarah watched the rescue team work with fascination and respect. Every movement was deliberate and coordinated, with team members communicating constantly to ensure everyone's safety. She realized that mountain rescue was far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined, requiring specialized training, equipment, and teamwork. Dr. Chen carefully stabilized Officer Thompson's suspected broken leg using an inflatable splint, then secured his head and neck with a cervical collar to prevent any movement that might worsen potential spinal injuries. Throughout the process, she kept checking his vital signs and making notes on a waterproof pad. Sarah, we're going to need you to climb back up now, said Mike, the lead rescuer. We'll have team members help you, but we need to clear the area so we can safely move Officer Thompson. You've done an incredible job, but now we need to take over. Sarah felt torn between wanting to see the rescue through to completion and understanding that she might be in the way of the professional operation. She had been with Officer Thompson for so long that leaving him felt like abandoning a responsibility, even though she knew the rescue team was far better qualified to help him. 2 rescue team members helped Sarah climb back up the ravine, providing her with a safety harness and guiding her to the best hand and footholds. The ascent was much easier with their assistance and proper equipment, though Sarah's legs were shaky from fatigue and the adrenaline rush of the morning's events. When Sarah reached the top of the ravine, Max greeted her with overwhelming enthusiasm, jumping up and licking her face as if he had been worried about her safety during her long absence. Several rescue team members paused in their work to pet Max and praise him for his role in discovering Officer Thompson. This dog deserves a medal, said one of the rescuers. If he hadn't alerted you to something being wrong, Officer Thompson might not have been found for days, if at all. This trail isn't heavily used, especially the section where you were hiking. Sarah felt a surge of pride in Max, realizing that his instincts and training had been as crucial to the rescue as her own actions. She hugged him tightly, grateful for his companionship and his sharp senses that had started the chain of events leading to Officer Thompson's rescue. The rescue team had established a communication relay system, with one member positioned to maintain radio contact with the teams below, and another coordinating with the helicopter that was en route to a landing zone further down the mountain. Sarah learned that Officer Thompson would be stabilized in the ravine, then carefully carried out to meet the helicopter for rapid transport to the nearest trauma center. As the morning progressed, Sarah watched the rescue operation continue with methodical precision. The team below worked to secure Officer Thompson in the rescue stretcher, while the team above prepared the rope systems that would be used to haul him up the steep slope. Every aspect of the operation had been practiced and refined through years of training and real-world rescues. Sarah's parents had been contacted through the emergency dispatch system, and they were driving up the mountain to meet her. She felt a mix of anticipation about seeing them and anxiety about explaining why she had taken an unknown trail and ended up in such a dangerous situation, but she also felt a sense of accomplishment and maturity that came from handling a serious emergency on her own. The rescue operation was reaching its critical phase, with Officer Thompson about to begin his journey back up the ravine wall. Sarah watched intently, knowing that the next hour would determine whether her early morning discovery would result in saving a life or whether she would always wonder if she could have done something more to help. The coordination between the rescue team members was like watching a well-rehearsed dance, with each person knowing exactly what their role was and how their actions affected the safety of everyone involved. Sarah realized she was witnessing true professionalism and teamwork under pressure, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The most critical moment of the rescue came when the team began lifting Officer Thompson up the ravine wall. Sarah watched with held breath as the stretcher, secured with multiple safety lines, slowly rose from the rocky bottom. Dr. Chen climbed alongside the stretcher, continuously monitoring Officer Thompson's condition and adjusting his medical equipment as needed. The ascent took nearly 45 minutes, with frequent stops to ensure that Officer Thompson remained stable and that the rescue equipment was functioning properly. Sarah could see the intense concentration on every rescue team member's face as they coordinated the complex operation. One small mistake could endanger not only Officer Thompson, but also the rescuers working to save him. When the stretcher finally reached the top of the ravine, there was a collective sigh of relief from everyone involved. Officer Thompson was immediately transferred to a more comfortable transport stretcher, and Dr. Chen continued her medical assessment with additional equipment that had been waiting at the top. His condition is stable, but he definitely needs surgery for his leg, and we're concerned about the head injury, Dr. Chen explained to the team leader. The helicopter transport will be crucial for getting him to advanced medical care quickly. Sarah's parents arrived just as the rescue team was preparing to carry Officer Thompson down the trail to meet the helicopter. Her mother immediately wrapped her in a tight hug, tears in her eyes from worry and relief. Her father looked both concerned and proud as he took in the scene of professional rescuers and emergency equipment. When we got the call that you had found an injured police officer and were involved in a rescue operation, we didn't know what to think, her mother said. We were terrified that something had happened to you, but also amazed that you had done something so brave. Sarah's father spoke with Mike, the rescue team leader, to understand exactly what had happened and what role Sarah had played in the rescue. Your daughter showed incredible maturity and judgment, Mike told her parents. She made all the right decisions under pressure, and her actions quite possibly saved Officer Thompson's life. As the rescue team began their careful journey down the trail with Officer Thompson, Sarah and her parents followed at a distance. Max trotted alongside Sarah, seeming to understand that his role in the morning's drama had been important and well received by the humans around him. The helicopter landing zone was located in a meadow, about a mile down from where they had started. Sarah could hear the helicopter approaching long before she could see it, the rhythmic beating of its rotors echoing off the mountain walls. When it finally came into view, she was struck by how loud and powerful it seemed, and how much coordination was required between the flight crew and the ground rescue team. Officer Thompson was quickly but carefully loaded into the helicopter, with Dr. Chen accompanying him to continue his medical care during the flight to the trauma center. Before the helicopter departed, Dr. Chen approached Sarah and her family. I want you to know that Officer Thompson's chances are very good because of how Quickly you found him and called for help, she said to Sarah. Every minute counts with head injuries, and the hours he might have been lying there if you hadn't discovered him could have made the difference between a full recovery and permanent disability. The helicopter lifted off with a thunderous roar, quickly disappearing over the mountain peaks toward the valley where the nearest hospital was located. Sarah watched until it was just a distant speck, feeling a complex mix of emotions about the morning's events. On the hike back down to the parking area, Sarah's parents asked her to explain exactly what had happened, from her decision to take the unknown trail to her choice to climb down into the ravine. Sarah recounted the story, realizing as she told it how many split-second decisions had led to the successful rescue. "I'm proud of you for helping someone in need," her father said, "but I'm also concerned about the risks you took. Climbing down that ravine could have resulted in 2 people needing rescue instead of 1. Sarah understood her father's concern, but she also felt confident that she had made the right choices given the circumstances. "I was careful, and I knew that if I didn't try to help, Officer Thompson might have died before anyone else found him," she replied. Mike, the rescue team leader, had followed them down the trail and overheard the conversation. "Sarah showed excellent judgment throughout this incident," he said to her parents. "She assessed the risks, used proper safety techniques for the descent, and most importantly, she called for help immediately, rather than trying to handle the situation entirely on her own." As they reached the parking area, Sarah realized that the morning's events would likely change how she thought about hiking and outdoor activities. She had learned that the mountains could be dangerous in ways she hadn't fully appreciated, but she had also discovered that she was capable of handling serious emergencies with composure and effectiveness. Several news reporters had arrived at the trailhead, having heard about the rescue operation on their emergency scanners. They approached Sarah and her family, asking for interviews about the dramatic rescue. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention, but she also recognized that the story might inspire other people to learn first aid skills or to trust their instincts when they encountered emergency situations. The rescue team members were packing up their equipment and preparing to return to their base, but several of them took time to speak with Sarah about her actions and to encourage her interest in emergency response. "Have you ever thought about joining a search and rescue team when you're older?" Mike asked. "You have natural instincts for this kind of work." Sarah hadn't considered that possibility before, but the idea intrigued her. The professionalism and teamwork she had witnessed during the rescue operation impressed her, and she realized that helping people in emergency situations felt meaningful and important to her. The days following the rescue brought unexpected attention to Sarah and her family. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the teenage girl and her dog who had saved a police officer's life, complete with photos of Sarah and Max on the mountain trail. The story was picked up by regional news outlets, and soon Sarah was receiving interview requests from television stations and online media. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the sudden fame, preferring to focus on her relief that Officer Thompson was recovering well. The hospital had reported that he had undergone successful surgery for his broken leg and that his head injury, while serious, was not life-threatening. The doctors confirmed that the quick response had indeed been crucial to preventing more severe complications. 3 days after the rescue, Sarah received a phone call that surprised her entire family. Officer Thompson himself was calling from his hospital bed to thank her personally for saving his life. His voice was weak but clear as he explained what had happened the night he fell. "I was responding to a report of a missing hiker," Officer Thompson told Sarah. "I had been searching the upper trails with a flashlight when I apparently got too close to an unstable edge. I don't remember the fall itself, but I woke up briefly a few times during the night, unable to move or call for help. When I heard your voice, I thought I might be hallucinating." Officer Thompson went on to explain that his radio had been damaged in the fall, and even if it had worked, he probably wouldn't have had the strength to operate it effectively. Sarah's discovery and her ability to get the radio working had been the key to his rescue. "I have a daughter about your age," Officer Thompson continued, "and I keep thinking about how brave you were to climb down there and help a stranger. Your parents should be incredibly proud of you." The conversation with Officer Thompson helped Sarah process her own feelings about the rescue. She had been second-guessing some of her decisions, wondering if she had taken unnecessary risks or if she could have done anything differently. Hearing directly from the person she had helped reassured her that her actions had been appropriate and effective. At school, Sarah found herself something of a celebrity among her classmates and teachers. The principal asked her to speak at a school assembly about the importance of first aid training and emergency preparedness. Sarah was nervous about public speaking, but she felt the message was important enough to overcome her discomfort. During her presentation, Sarah emphasized that the rescue had been successful because of preparation and training, not just luck or courage. She encouraged her fellow students to take first aid courses and to learn basic emergency response skills. She also talked about the importance of trusting their instincts and being willing to help others, even when it meant taking calculated risks. Max became something of a celebrity in his own right, with local pet stores and veterinary clinics featuring his story in their newsletters and social media posts. The local police department presented Max with an honorary certificate recognizing his role in Officer Thompson's rescue, complete with a special collar badge that he wore proudly. During their continued hiking adventures, the rescue team that had responded to Sarah's call invited her and her family to visit their training facility and learn more about mountain rescue operations. Sarah was fascinated by the specialized equipment, training techniques, and dedication of the volunteer rescuers who risked their own safety to help others in emergency situations. During the visit, Sarah learned that mountain rescue teams were always looking for volunteers, and that many team members had started their involvement as teenagers through youth programs and training courses. The idea of becoming involved in search and rescue work continued to appeal to Sarah, and she began researching the requirements and training programs available in her area. Sarah's hiking experiences changed significantly after the rescue. Her parents were initially hesitant to let her continue her solo hiking adventures, but they eventually agreed to new safety protocols. Sarah now carried a GPS device, a satellite communication beacon for emergencies, and a more comprehensive first aid kit. She also committed to staying on established trails and informing her parents of her exact route and expected return time. The experience had taught Sarah valuable lessons about risk, assessment, and emergency preparedness, but it had also reinforced her love of the mountains and outdoor activities. She felt more confident in her abilities and more aware of her responsibilities to help others when the opportunity arose. Officer Thompson's recovery progressed well, and he was able to return to light duty. After several weeks of medical leave, he made a point of staying in touch with Sarah and her family, sending updates on his recovery and expressing continued gratitude for her life-saving actions. The media attention gradually died down, but Sarah continued to receive occasional letters and emails from people who had read about the rescue. Many of the messages came from parents thanking her for being a positive role model for young people, while others came from hikers and outdoor enthusiasts who had been inspired to improve their own emergency preparedness. Sarah began to understand that her actions had impact beyond just saving Officer Thompson's life. The story had raised awareness about hiking safety, the importance of first aid training, and the value of trusting one's instincts in emergency situations. She felt a sense of responsibility to continue promoting these important messages. As the weeks passed, Sarah found herself thinking more seriously about her future career plans. The rescue experience had shown her that she was capable of staying calm under pressure and making good decisions in crisis situations. She began researching careers in emergency services, medicine, and search and rescue, realizing that the morning's adventure might have pointed her toward her life's calling. 6 months after the rescue, Sarah's life had settled into a new normal that incorporated the lessons and opportunities that had emerged from that dramatic morning on the mountain. She had enrolled in an advanced first aid course and was working towards certification as a wilderness first responder, a credential that would qualify her to provide emergency medical care in remote outdoor settings. Officer Thompson had made a full recovery and returned to active duty with the police department. He had also become an advocate for improved safety protocols for officers working alone in remote areas. Partly inspired by his own experience and Sarah's rescue, he maintained regular contact with Sarah and her family, becoming something of a mentor and friend. The local mountain rescue team had accepted Sarah into their youth training program, where she was learning rope techniques, navigation skills, and advanced emergency response procedures. Despite being one of the youngest participants, she had quickly distinguished herself through her dedication and natural aptitude for rescue work. Max had adapted well to his role as a semi-famous rescue dog, and Sarah had begun training him in basic search techniques that could be useful in future emergency situations. While he would never be a certified search and rescue dog without extensive professional training, his natural instincts and bond with Sarah made him a valuable companion for their continued outdoor adventures. Sarah's academic performance had improved significantly since the rescue, partly due to increased confidence and partly because of her clearer sense of direction regarding her future goals. She had begun focusing on science and mathematics courses that would prepare her for a career in emergency medicine or search and rescue operations. The rescue had also strengthened Sarah's family relationships. Her parents had gained new respect for their daughter's judgment and capabilities, while also becoming more involved in outdoor safety and emergency preparedness themselves. Her father had joined a local volunteer fire department, inspired by the professional rescuers he had met during Officer Thompson's rescue. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 6 months after the original rescue, Sarah and Max returned to the Whispering Pines Trail for a commemorative hike. This time they were accompanied by Officer Thompson, who had requested permission to join them for what he called his second chance hike. Officer Thompson had been cleared by his doctors for moderate physical activity, and he wanted to see firsthand the location where his life had been saved. The hike would also serve as a way for him to confront any psychological impact from his fall and to celebrate his complete recovery. As they approached the fork in the trail, where Sarah had made the fateful decision to explore the unknown path, Officer Thompson paused to look around. "I never really understood how remote this area was," he said. "If you hadn't decided to take that trail, I probably wouldn't have survived." Sarah led Officer Thompson and her parents to the spot where Max had first detected something wrong in the ravine below. The rescue team had installed safety barriers along the edge to prevent future accidents, and a small plaque had been mounted recognizing the location as the site of a successful mountain rescue operation, looking down into the ravine, where she had spent those crucial hours with the unconscious officer. Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since that morning. The experience had given her confidence, purpose, and a clear direction for her future that she might never have discovered otherwise. Officer Thompson thanked Sarah once again, but this time, his gratitude extended beyond the immediate rescue. "You didn't just save my life that day," he told her. "You reminded me why I became a police officer in the first place, to help people and make a difference in the community. Seeing your courage and selflessness inspired me to be better at my own job." The group completed their hike at the scenic overlook that had been Sarah's original destination 6 months earlier. The view was as spectacular as ever, but Sarah found herself appreciating it differently now. The mountains still represented adventure and solitude, but they also symbolized the unexpected opportunities to help others that could arise at any moment. As they prepared to head back down the trail, Sarah's phone rang with a call from the mountain rescue team coordinator. A hiker had been reported missing on a trail about 10 miles away, and they were requesting all available volunteers to assist in the search operation. Sarah had been hoping for an opportunity to participate in a real rescue mission as part of her training. "Can we respond to the call?" Sarah asked her parents, excitement evident in her voice. Officer Thompson immediately offered to drive them to the search location, eager to support Sarah's continued involvement in rescue work. Within an hour, Sarah found herself at another trailhead, this time as an official member of a search team, rather than an accidental rescuer. She was assigned to work with an experienced team leader, tasked with searching a specific section of trail for signs of the missing hiker. Max accompanied the search team, his nose working constantly to detect any unusual scents that might indicate human presence. While he wasn't trained as a professional search dog, his natural abilities and his experience from the previous rescue made him a valuable addition to the team. The missing hiker was found safely after several hours of searching, suffering only from mild dehydration and disorientation after getting lost in an unfamiliar area. Sarah's role in the search had been small but meaningful, and she felt the satisfaction of contributing to another successful rescue operation. As they drove home that evening, Sarah realized that the morning 6 months ago, when she and Max had discovered Officer Thompson, had been a turning point that had led to this moment. She was no longer just a teenager who enjoyed hiking. She had become someone who was prepared and willing to help others in emergency situations. The rescue had taught Sarah that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences in other people's lives, simply by being prepared, staying alert, and having the courage to act when action was needed. It had also shown her that one moment of bravery could open doors to a lifetime of meaningful service to others. Looking ahead, Sarah could envision a future filled with outdoor adventures, continued training, and opportunities to help people in crisis situations. The girl who had started that morning simply wanting a peaceful hike with her dog had discovered her calling as someone who would spend her life making sure that others could safely enjoy the mountains she loved so much.